The ridges in southwestern Virginia have always carried whispers. Locals say land itself remembers every scream and footstep. Daniel, a lifelong hunter, grew up hearing his grandfather talk about these wild men, feral, hairy creatures that weren't quite men and weren't quite beasts. He never believed it, not until the fall of 1999. Daniel set out before dawn with his rifle slung over his shoulder, following a game trail deep into the holler. By noon, he'd brought down a buck. He gutted it in a clearing, steam rising off of the cold air as crows gathered overhead. That's when he felt it, the prickling sensation of being watched. At first, he thought that it was a black bear, but the forest was too quiet. No birds, no squirrels, just stillness pressing against his ears. Then he heard the crunch. Heavy footfalls, slow, deliberate, coming from the tree line. Who's there?" he called out, gripping his rifle tighter. What stepped out was no hunter, no man. It was tall, easily 7 feet tall, with tangled long hanging hair and ropes down to its chest and his shoulders. The skin where bare was gray with dirt, stretched tight over the muscles that looked too dense and too strong. And its eyes, they never locked onto him with intelligence. There was hunger. Daniel froze, every instinct screaming to run, but his legs refused. The thing sniffed the air, then let out a low guttural noise, like a growl forced through a human throat. It glanced at the deer's carcass, then back at him. In one swift move, it bent, seized the deer by the antlers, and dragged it into the brush, as if it weighed nothing. Daniel raised his rifle, but before he could fire, the creature let out a scream, high, furious, and so powerful it rattled his ribs. He dropped to his knees, ears ringing, vision swimming. Through the blur, he saw shapes, more of them. Tall, broad figures shifting between the trees, eyes glinting in the dim light. They circled silently, watching, waiting. By the time Daniel stumbled back to his truck, half mad with fear, the deer was gone. Only deep drag marks in the soil remained. He never hunted alone again. Years later, he still won't talk about that day, but in the mountains, folks still whisper. There are places you don't go after dark, places where the wild men are more than legend, where they watch and wait, just beyond the timberline. The Appalachian Mountains are full of hollers people don't go into anymore. Old mining scars, ridges thick with laurel, valleys where the sunlight barely touches the ground. Locals say those places belong to something older than us. In the fall of 2003, a young man named Ethan Caldwell, 26 years old, drove down from Lexington, Kentucky to spend the weekend hiking near Pine Mountain. Ethan was the kind who felt most alive outdoors. He told friends he was going alone, but he planned to meet a small group from an online hiking forum at the trailhead. They gathered that Sunday morning, 5 hikers in total, and set out along this unmarked path. It was chilly, the fog rolling off of the mountainsides in low sheets. Ethan joked with the others, carried more gear than he probably needed, and seemed perfectly fine. By mid-afternoon, they reached a remote saddle between 2 ridges. That was when Ethan said that he wanted to explore a side trail he'd spotted earlier. He promised that he would catch up at camp before sundown. He never did. At first, the group assumed that he'd gotten turned around. They backtracked, called his name, but the fog grew thicker, and the night fell fast. By morning, they hiked out and reported him missing. Search and rescue teams combed the area for nearly 2 weeks. Dogs picked up his scent briefly on the trail, but lost it in a patch of thick rhododendron. Strangely, no tracks were found. It was as if he'd stepped off the path and simply just vanished. On the 3rd day, a searcher reported hearing a scream in the woods. Not an animal, not a man, but something caught in between. Others brushed it off as a bobcat or a coyote. But that night, several team members claimed they heard heavy footsteps circling their base camp, just out of reach of a flashlight. 5 days into the search, a team located Ethan's backpack nearly a mile off trail, wedged in a split tree trunk. It looked as though it had been shoved there deliberately. Inside were his wallet, map, and compass. His bottle of water was empty. Nearby, deep gouges were found in the pine trees. Too high for a bear, too deliberate for chance. Then came the deer carcasses. 2 of them ripped apart, dragged close together, and left half buried under leaves. Searchers swore it looked like something was feeding and hiding its eyes. A local man born and raised on the mountain approached the authorities during the search. He was in his 70s, face withered like the bark of a tree around him. He told them plainly, "You won't find that boy. Not whole anyway. The wild men got him. My granddaddy warned me never to go past the ridge. They'll stalk you, hunt you, take you if they want you." The sheriff dismissed him as a drunk, but some of these younger deputies refused to camp on this ridge after hearing him speak. On the 9th night of the search, 2 volunteers were stationed on the far ridge when they reportedly started seeing movement. Tall, human-like silhouettes crossing the tree line. The radios cut off mid-sentence. By the time another team reached them, the men were gone. They turned up an hour later, shaken and pale. One of them swore that he saw 3 figures, taller than any man, covered in hair, moving silently between the trees. They said that they were watching him. "Like people," he whispered, "but not." They refused to return to the rest of the search. The official report states Ethan Caldwell was presumed lost due to misadventure. His body was never recovered. The case remains open, his family left without answers. But locals will tell you the truth if you ask quietly, over a fire or a drink. They'll tell you Pine Mountains belongs to the wild men, that Ethan wasn't the first to vanish there, and he won't be the last. And if you're ever in those woods at night, you might hear it yourself, a crunch of heavy footstep, pacing just beyond the lantern light, waiting for you to be alone. They say the mountains keep their secrets. Clay Hollow, deep in eastern Kentucky, has one that's never been laid to rest. It happened in the late 70s. A family lived in a sagging shack at the base of a ridge. They had a boy, 10 years old, named Robbie. Everyone remembered him as a kind of kid who whistled while he was walking, always chasing his dog, always barefoot no matter how rough the ground was. One October evening, just as the light was fading, Robbie went out into the yard with a mason jar to catch fireflies. His mother said that she could hear him giggling, running back and forth in the grass. Then she heard it, a sharp yelp, cut off quick. She thought at first that it was the dog, By the time she reached the porch, Robbie was gone. Neighbors poured out with their lanterns. They found the dog trembling under the steps, ribs shivering so hard that it made his teeth chatter. The animal wouldn't move, not even for food. What they saw in the dirt wasn't any animal. The prints were bare, human-shaped, but they were long, too long. Toes spread wide, deep into the soil. A set of them circled the shack twice, as if whoever made them had been watching and waiting. And mixed in were smaller prints, Robbie's, dragged between them. The sheriff brought dogs. At first they caught Robbie's scent, but at the edge of the hollow, the dogs balked. One dropped flat, howling until its voice cracked. Another turned on its own handler, biting him hard enough to send him to the doctor, just to break free and run back to the trail. Inside Clay Hollow, everything went silent. No wind, no birds, just the sound of boots crunching leaves. They found his shirt the second day, snagged high on a limb, 12 feet up, torn down the back. There were no claw marks, no blood, just shredded fabric that looked almost sliced. By the third night, searchers refused to camp in the woods. They claimed something circled their perimeter, heavy footsteps just outside of the lantern's glow. One man swore that he woke to whispering, low and harsh, like voices that didn't use words, but they still spoke. On the fifth day, the sheriff's men found Robbie's shoes by the creek, placed neatly side by side, laces tied in double knots, but the shoes were soaked through the mud. And inside one, they found something disturbing. A handful of deer fur, clotted with blood. The creek bank was churned with tracks, wide, barefoot prints, leading in every direction. Too many to count. The end nobody talks about. The search ended on the 7th day. Officially, Robbie was lost in the wilderness. But that's not what the locals say. They whisper that the wildmen took him. Creatures older than any settler, older than the Cherokee, living deep in the ridges. Not quite men, not quite animal. They don't just kill, they take. And here's the part that most folks won't repeat. A week later, Robbie's mom swore she heard her son outside at dusk. His voice calling, "Mama, come get me." But when she opened the door, the yard was empty. Just bare prints in the dirt, long, splayed toes, circling the shack again. She moved away by spring. Couldn't stand hearing him anymore. Even now, people say if you go to the Clay Hollow at night, you might hear a child laughing in the dark. But if you follow it too far, the laughter twists into a scream. And then, nothing. The Great Smoky Mountains are beautiful by day, but when the fog rolls in and the woods go quiet, they can swallow you whole. And in June of 1969, they swallowed a little boy named Dennis Martin. It was Father's Day weekend. The Martin family, Dennis, his brother, his father, and his grandfather, hiked up Spence Field, the high grassy bald on Tennessee-North Carolina border. The air was warm, the meadows green, a perfect place for a kid to play. Dennis was 6 years old, full of energy, tagging along with his older brother. The afternoon, the boys decided to play a trick on the grown-ups. They split up and hid in the bushes, planning to jump out and scare them. The older boys leapt out, laughing just as planned, but Dennis didn't. They waited. They called his name. No Dennis. Within minutes, his father was running the meadow, searching every brush, every tree. The place was wide open. There was nowhere he should have been able to hide. But he was gone, vanished in broad daylight. The family raised the alarm fast. Rangers swarmed the mountain. Volunteers poured in. Within hours, hundreds of people were combing these ridges, calling Dennis's name. By the next day, there were nearly 1,000 searchers. They found nothing. No clothing, no footprints, no trail. The search dogs were useless. Some say the rain washed away the scents. Others say that the dogs acted strange, circling, whining, refusing to go deeper into certain hollows, as if they know something was in there, waiting. Here's the part that chills me. While the search was happening on Spence Field, another family was camping miles away, down on the Tennessee side. They told rangers that they had heard a scream tear through the woods. Sharp, high, human, then silence. When they looked up the ridge, they saw movement. A figure, too big to be a child, dark, rough, shaggy, and it was carrying something over his shoulder. The rangers downplayed it, brushed it off to being just a coincidence. But that family never forgot what they saw, and the locals whispered that it was no coincidence at all. Weeks passed. No Dennis. His family never got a body, never got closure, just emptiness. But the mountains have their own stories. Old-timers talk about wild men in those ridges, feral half-humans, things that live in caves, stealing livestock, raiding camps, and sometimes taking people. Some believe that one of them watched the Martin boys playing that day, watched Dennis slip behind the brush, waited for the perfect moment, and when it came, it snatched him up and melted into the trees, quicker than any searcher could follow. If you camp in Spence Field when the fog settles low, people swear that you can hear it, a faint scream carried on the wind. Starting sharp and human, fading into something not quite human at all. And if you listen close, you'll hear heavy footsteps pacing you from the tree line, never showing themselves, just waiting for you to wander little too far from the firelight. Because the wild men of the Smokies, they're still out there, and Dennis Martin was never the last. Back in the late 80s, there were families that were camping in the Kentucky Red River Gorge, a place known for its sheer cliffs, thick woods, and miles of trails that can twist you around until you don't know which way you're actually going. The family had 2 kids, Sarah, 12, and Jacob, 8. On the second night of their trip, just as the fire was dying down, Sarah said that she heard something moving in the brush behind the camp. Her father told her that it was just raccoons, but the sound kept circling. Heavy steps that crunched once, then stopped. Crunch, stop. Always just out of the reach of the firelight. That night, Sarah said she dreamed of eyes watching her from the trees. The next morning, the family packed day gear for a short hike to a natural arc. The trail wasn't hard, but the woods pressed close, silent except for their own footsteps. At one point, Jacob stopped to tie his shoe. His father told Sarah to wait with him while the rest of the family went a few yards ahead. It couldn't have been more than a minute, but when Sarah looked down again, Jacob was gone. The ground was covered in leaves. No prints, no sound of someone running, just silence. Panic spread fast. Rangers and volunteers flooded the gorge. Helicopters swept the cliffs. Dogs were brought in, but just like other disappearances in these mountains. The dogs acted strange. They picked up Jacob's scent, but circled in place, whining, refusing to go deeper into the stretch of dense laurel. 3 days in, searchers found something. Jacob's jacket, neatly folded on a flat rock beside the trail, a mile from where he vanished. And above the rock, deep scratches gouged into the tree, 12 feet high. Sarah didn't talk about it for years, but when she grew older, she told somebody what she remembered from that morning. She'd sworn that she had heard something, a low growl, but not quite animal. She said that the woods went dead silent, and then she caught the glimpse of a hand pulling back into the brush. Not a child's hand, not a man's hand. Gray skin, thick knuckles, and fingernails black with dirt. She never saw her brother again. The official report said that Jacob became lost in the wilderness. Nobody was ever found, but locals whisper that the gorge is home to these wild men once again. Things that stalk the ridge, barefoot and silent, waiting for the moment to snatch those who fall behind. Hikers say that if you go deep into the Red River Gorge at night, sometimes you'll hear a child's voice calling for help. But if you follow it, the voice always seems to just be a little bit further ahead. And eventually, you realize it's not a child at all. So, I just wanted to come on and say before we get into the outro that I do truly want to tell everyone that I've been working with that has been a part of everything since the beginning. I know that it's been a little bit since I hit 2K, but I do want to say a massive thank you to every single one of you. Because honestly, I don't know where I'd be right now on any of this stuff. I mean, yeah, I was definitely putting in the work by myself, but being able to have somebody in your corner rooting for you and people pushing you and egging you on in the background, even though they don't get any light shed on them, like, there are a lot of names that I could really speak on when it comes to that. Massive thank you to all of you. You all know who you are. There's definitely a list. I will say that. There was a very big time for a while that I actually almost did completely give up and get off of this. There was a few months which I know some of the people that watch consistently witnessed me just kind of going downwards, and you could tell it in the recording and everything of I was not into it. I was losing my passion, my spark. And I just wanted to say to you guys, to all the other narrators that have helped me, all the friendships that I've created, massive thank you to you guys, because once again, I don't know if I would still be here right now. But I just wanted to say that because 2K is a big deal. I've been jumping drastically, and I know people are probably going to assume the amount of people that are coming over to my channel is going to change me, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, it just makes me more thankful and kind of opens my eyes and realize, hey, you've got something here. You can do this. You've got this. And that's something that I've actually lacked for quite some time now. I'm not really good at doing something like this. But a huge thank you to all of the supporters, all of the narrators that have helped me throughout this entire time. I don't want to just throw out names out there. I don't want people to think, oh, they're getting recognition over me. This is to all of you. Nobody's getting recognition over anybody. I'm just saying thank you to all of you. And if you guys hear this, all of the guys and gals, thank you. Just thank you. Just another reminder, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing the 2K giveaway. we've added in a couple extra people on the roster for the actual live stream. We're gonna be doing that, doing a giveaway, just talking, letting you guys ask questions, whatever you guys feel, whatever. It's going to be very entertaining, I can promise you that. Especially with all these people all into one little live stream. It's going to be pretty interesting. But if you enjoyed this and you would like to hear more of these Appalachian type of stories, because it was brought to me that these are definitely stuff that people want to hear, make sure to let me know down in the comment section. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot of content, a lot more coming, I can guarantee that. We've got a lot of stuff that are currently in the works. Make sure to check out the links in the description, Twitter, Instagram, yada yada, everything like that. And make sure to turn on those post notifications, please. It's definitely working a lot better than it has, but sometimes it can be a little bit spotty. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.